Welcome back to Sports Crunch with D. Crom. This is your host, David Cromwell, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever or whenever you are. And all I can say is the 2020 NFL Draft couldn't have been a better success, especially given the circumstances we're all under. The NFL couldn't have done a better job in giving us a more efficient and tasteful draft in which the remote and virtual quality of it went very smooth without any hiccups, and they kept our healthcare heroes and essential workers front and center throughout the whole draft, using it as an opportunity to raise much needed funds for it. It couldn't have gone better. And we're almost 2 weeks out from the draft. And in that spirit, we begin our annual division by division draft recap of all the draft classes of each NFL team, starting with the AFC West. And joining us to recap the draft classes of the Chargers, Raiders, Broncos, and Chiefs is our good friend Nick Kendell, who covers the NFL, the Broncos, and the NFL draft for MileHighHuddle.com. Nick, great to have you back on as always.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking football with you, David. I appreciate having a platform to talk draft. I mean, a lot of people got a lot of stuff going on right now, and the fact that we can just talk football is truly a blessing.
It most certainly is, and I hope epidemiologists and workers in the healthcare industry like you are doing very well right now as we speak. And I just want to say that I'm thinking of you every day, Nick.
Well, I mean, appreciate it, obviously. A lot of people doing stuff more important than I am, but
of course, but you're part of that research department, and these researchers are also an integral part of the team that is going to get us through this and hopefully get the worst of this behind us sooner rather than later with the innovations of these new drugs and hopefully vaccines currently under trial. But that's for another episode. And let's start off with the draft class of the Los Angeles Chargers.
That sounds good.
And let's first go over the draft. As you can see, their draft class right here. They started out with the 6th overall pick, taking who they hope will be their quarterback of the future, Justin Herbert from Oregon. Then they traded their day 2 picks, their picks in rounds 2 and 3 to the Patriots to move all the way up to 23 to take Oklahoma linebacker Kenneth Murray. And day 3 of the draft, since they sacrificed those day 2 picks to get Kenneth Murray, was dominated by offense. Joshua Kelly, UCLA running back, Joe Reed, wide receiver, Virginia, and KJ Hill, who I saw at the Senior Bowl, and he put on a pretty good show there, Ohio State wide receiver, and Alohi Gilman, a safety from Notre Dame. And now that we've introduced you to their whole draft class, let's start out at the very top with Justin Herbert. He is going to define this draft class. Now, Justin Herbert is a very interesting study. He's more of a project compared to the 2 quarterbacks selected ahead of him, Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa, respectively. But a lot of people felt that he was miscast in that Oregon offense, like that Oregon offense didn't really give him the liberty to do what he does best. And the fact that he landed in a place where he doesn't have to play right away, given Tyrod Taylor's presence, and with a very good cachet of weapons and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, and Austin Eckler. Some people think the Chargers couldn't have been a better landing spot for Justin Herbert. Are the Chargers the ideal landing spot for Justin Herbert to reach his full potential?
I think if they continue to be a team that have prioritized the running game, I do think that's possible. The thing that scares me with Justin Herbert landing with Los Angeles Chargers is that Herbert is a guy that I felt like when pressure got around him, his process would get a little bit rough, a little bit rushed, and he would lose some accuracy, get a little bit wonky. And the Chargers do not have a good offensive line. I mean, I know they traded Okung for Darrell Williams, I believe was the trade. They got
Trey Turner.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's Trey Turner. So their interior offensive line, added there, but didn't bring in any tackles in the draft. Maybe a team that could go after one of those tackles still out there. But Herbert, I think he needs a good offensive line, and right now I do not see that with the Los Angeles Chargers. That being said, they kind of kept him in a box at Oregon, throwing a lot of screens, not letting him use his athleticism until that bowl game. So maybe it'll be a little bit like coming to the NFL with Josh Allen, where you let the tools go, you let him go out there, make some plays, be a playmaker with his legs as much as the arm, and unleash some of that ability. But I will say, Justin Herbert for the Chargers scares me a little bit, just because I think he's pretty offensive line dependent.
Oh, that is a very good point. And the Chargers, much like the Broncos, are very tackle deficient right now, if not even more so than the Broncos. And that could be problematic if Justin Herbert is forced to be rushed into action at some point this season or whenever football resumes. And their other first round pick, Kenneth Murray, a linebacker from Oklahoma. Many NFL teams were high on him because of his character. He has natural leadership abilities. He works his butt off, which is great and all, but he was one of the guys that if the Broncos took, you would have screamed and pulled your hair out, metaphorically speaking, wouldn't you? I understand that those traits and Kenneth Murray's athleticism were reasons for the Chargers to move up and take him that high. But what are the points in Kenneth Murray's game that concern you the most?
Well, I just never really saw a guy that was comfortable in coverage. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Today's NFL, it's all about the passing game. And Kenneth Murray played more of a seek and destroy, hunting type of linebacker position with some simple dropbacks in zone coverage. So just did not see much there as far as the processing side, just the natural feel for coverage. Maybe that'll turn for him. But, I mean, you see a lot of guys with his kind of athleticism, the profile, that come into the league and just it doesn't work for them. You know, athleticism isn't the end-all, be-all for a linebacker. But people rave about his, you know, I guess character, the drive he has, the leadership that he just emits. So trading both their day 2 picks also, I don't know. I mean, you need help for Justin Herbert. You need some offensive linemen. I don't love the trading up for him. Kenneth Murray, 23, okay value. Not my cup of tea, but I think that taking Kenneth Murray on top of giving up your day 2 picks to get him is probably what I like the least about it.
Oh, very good point. But keep in mind, the Chargers also have Derwin James coming back healthy for whenever football resumes. And given Derwin James' versatility and his ability to potentially be the cover linebacker, don't you think that takes the pressure off of Kenneth Murray, at least early on, and Gus Bradley can use him in that search and destroy role as long as Derwin James stays healthy?
I think a little bit, but offenses dictate matchups. I mean, they get to choose where the ball goes. So if you have a good offensive coordinator, a good scheme, you can still isolate Kenneth Murray in a matchup, and they can still try to cover him up on that defensive side. But eventually, I think he's going to be a guy who gives up a big play. And it's not just the passing game where you see some issues too. You see some plays where he gives up some explosive plays on the running game as well because he over pursues. He gets a little bit caught up with pre-snap motion or play action. So I don't know. I don't really love the linebacker position from value to begin with. And then the fact that he's more of a run-stuffing, athletic kind of guy. I don't know. I'm just not the type of guy that I would value in today's NFL. I think he'll be good. And also don't sleep on Drew Tranquil, also for the Chargers, who's a really good athletic coverage linebacker for them. But Kenneth Murray, trading up around 1 for him, I prefer Patrick Queen, if we're going to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. And the Ravens were probably jumping for joy that he fell to their laps at 28 and got drafted not just after Kenneth Murray, but also after Jordan Brooks, for crying out loud. So it's amazing.
Seahawks. Excuse me.
Yep, Seahawks. But it is amazing how teams let too many good players fall to Baltimore every single year. The Ravens always take advantage of it during the draft. But staying with the Chargers here, their day 3 haul, like I mentioned, it was dominated by the offensive skill position players. Joshua Kelly, UCLA running back, Joe Reed, receiver return man from Virginia, and Ohio State wide receiver KJ Hill. Of those 3, which of those guys are more likely to make the biggest impact long-term for the Chargers and Justin Herbert?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I feel like Joshua Kelly is the immediate answer because Austin Eckler, while he's a fantastic running back because he's so good in the pass game, he's never going to be a guy that's going to be a bell cow. You need somebody who can complement him, take some carries, take some of the running carries especially. I think Joshua Kelly can do that. Pretty good running back there. Long term, I'll go with Joe Reed. I think again, wide receiver, there's value there. He's got some playmaking upside. And I know that a lot of people like KJ Hill, but for me, he's the style of wide receiver that I am devaluing more and more in today's game. Maybe some overcorrection from a guy like Deshawn Hamilton, but guys who are good route runners that can play the slot, if they can't offer plays, more than 10 yards down the field or after the catch as far as creating explosive plays, I want somebody more explosive that can create on the offense. So KJ Hill, I get that he's all-time leading receiver for Ohio State statistically, but the traits I just didn't see there. So 7th round, I think taking him in 7th round, that's fine, but I think that's where he should have gone to begin with. So I'll go with Joe Reed out of these guys. My favorite day 3 pick, though, was the other guy, Alohi Gilman, safety from Notre Dame. Yes, I thought he talking with people, I thought he was somebody that stood out in Mobile this year. And I also like him a lot they have a Nasir Adderley, who can be like kind of a nickelback safety for them, and Derwin James. So Alohi Gilman, I think he's going to have an ability to come in and be that third safety pretty quickly. So I like that pick a lot. He was one of my favorite day 3 safeties in this class.
Yes, and that third safety is a very underrated role in the modern NFL. And grades at this point are often proven to be worthless 3 to 4 years down the road. The final grades will not occur until then, but now we assign what I call paper grades. So if based on how this class at least looks on paper to you, what is your initial grade for the Chargers in this 2020 draft class?
I'll give it a C. I think it's an average class, but it's kind of like that Patrick Mahomes class a few years ago. I mean, they traded up. Obviously, they got Patrick Mahomes, but they also took Tano Passanio, who's been a disappointment. Jay Chesson was a disappointment. Their day 3 didn't do well, but because they hit Patrick Mahomes, none of that matters. So that's kind of the issue, or the stance I'll take with this Charger draft as well. If every single one of these other picks busts and Justin Herbert can become a franchise quarterback, doesn't matter. They hit the most important position.
Absolutely. This draft class will be dependent on how Justin Herbert turns out first and foremost. And let's move from the Chargers to the Las Vegas Raiders of Oakland. And the Las Vegas Raiders, I thought they had a very, very solid draft, actually. Despite some reaches here and there, they attacked a lot of their needs and got very good value in them. In round 1, they had 2 picks because of Khalil Mack trade, starting with Henry Ruggs, the speedy wide receiver from Alabama, and with their second first-round pick, Damon Arnett, a cornerback from Ohio State. Round 3, they doubled and tripled out on wide receiver with Lynn Bowden from Kentucky, who is also like a scat back, kind of more of an offensive weapon, gadget-type guy based on what I heard about him. And Brian Edwards, who, if not for injury, he would have been drafted much higher, that wide receiver, that big body target from South Carolina, potentially to be their X receiver, where Ruggs will be the Z. And Tanner Muse from Clemson, after a very fascinating combine, his stock flew up, and the Raiders decided that late 3rd round was good value for him. And day 3, I think they had excellent value here with John Simpson, a guard from Clemson, to potentially give them a guy to replace Gabe Jackson long-term. This definitely looks like it's Gabe Jackson's final year with the Raiders. And Amik Robertson, one of the better slot corner prospects of this draft, out of Louisiana Tech. And now we go to the top of the draft class to Henry Ruggs. And as you said, Kendell, this wide receiver class, as deep and as talented as it was, it's like ice cream. There was an argument for Henry Ruggs to be the first receiver off the board. There was an argument for Jerry Judy to be the first receiver off the board. There was an argument for CeeDee Lamb to be the first receiver off the board. But given what Marcus Mosher, a guy who's an insight I value tremendously, said, he thinks that Henry Ruggs going to a team with no clear-cut wide receiver 1 wasn't necessarily the best fit for him because he saw Ruggs as more of a high-end 2 coming into the league. So aside from his speed and his ability to force defenses into coverages they don't want to use based on his speed alone, why did Henry Ruggs make sense for the Raiders over CeeDee Lamb or even Jerry Judy?
Well, I will be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't go with one of those other 2 guys for the reason that you mentioned. I thought Henry Ruggs is a great option to be a secondary, a 1B wide receiver in this class, a guy that can force different coverages for you, put you in bad situations, but not a guy that you're going to want to pelt with targets, be a high volume guy. So, I mean, maybe that's how much you value a guy that creates mismatches for everyone else that high. Next year's got a great wide receiver class too. So getting a guy with Ruggs with that speed, maybe that was a unique enough skill set. They thought that it was worth being the first wide receiver off the board. Just didn't think it made as much sense for the Raiders. That being said, Ruggs with Waller is going to create some interesting matchups when they're playing on the same side of the field. Derek Carr is such a risk-averse quarterback. He does not want to put the ball down the field. At least he hasn't since he's suffered that injury. And Ruggs really actually wasn't the best deep threat, or not utilized as the biggest deep threat at Alabama. So, you see that speed. You want to see the deep threat there as far as ability to separate down the field. But with the questions with Ruggs doing that at Alabama, on top of Carr not trying to push the ball vertically, I'm curious if we're going to see that from them. That being said, I still like Ruggs. I think he brings a very unique skill set, and even if he's not getting 10 targets a game, he's going to impact the game because he creates for everyone else.
Oh, he most certainly will. And the Raiders' second of 2 first-round picks might have been the reach of the first round, according to many, and that was Damon Arnett, the cornerback from Ohio State. Do you think he was okay value there, or do you think it was a pretty much of a reach like most other people?
Well, I thought his tape this past year was pretty good, but then the information coming out about character concerns, he was older for the cornerback position as well. I believe he's already going to be 24 when the season kicks off. And on top of not testing the best, all that stuff to me made it seem like, well, you can probably get this guy day 2 at some point. Raiders liked him. I think Mayock said they used their own hand time instead of the electronic time, whatever floats their boat, I guess. But Arnett's a guy that, it's a cornerback position. He did have good tape this year. I think his tape this year was round 1 quality, maybe back into round 1. But I don't know. I think that you could have played the value game a little bit better here. I mean, I thought he was the 3rd best cornerback on that Ohio State team this year, but still, I mean, a guy who has a chance to be a starting boundary cornerback in the NFL, that can provide some value just a little early for me.
Yes. Do you think Jeff Gladdy or Christian Fulton or a guy like that would have made more sense at 19?
It depends if they're looking for a guy with a little bit more press ability and boundary ability. I think Fulton's going to be a little bit more inside, outside, and especially Gladney might be a pure slot. So I think Arnett actually offers more boundary ability, more press ability than those guys, but I don't know if he's as good of a coverage player, if that makes sense.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see how Arnett develops. But the other thing about Arnett that struck me, as I alluded to during our draft night live stream with Bill Rossetti and Andrew Weedman on night 1, was that Mike Mayock, he is a guy that wants high character guys, as he showed with the Cleveland Farrell pick last year. But Arnett had serious character questions, so it kind of screams to me that Arnett was more of a Gruden pick than a Mayock pick. What do you think?
That's possible. I mean, again, we're playing telephone here as regards to character. So that's, second hand, third hand, fourth hand, whatever you want to say.
Absolutely.
I never personally met Damon Arnett, and maybe he's turned the corner. I mean, he is 24 now. He's had a daughter, I believe, since he's had some issues. And this year looked like it finally clicked on tape for him at Ohio State. So maybe he turned the corner. Maybe he ends up being a really good player. I mean, he was a highly recruited player as well. So sometimes those things can click. And all it takes is one good meeting for a team to be sold on a guy. So we'll see. I like that as a cornerback. I know I would say the reach of the first round, we already mentioned him in Jordan Brooks, because chase and tackle linebacker that was less athletic than Kenneth Murray. I didn't get that, but at least with Arnett, you have high quality boundary tape at cornerback. Don't love it, but I don't think it's the worst pick in the world.
Oh, absolutely. What the Seahawks did definitely made the value of our net pick peanuts in question to the Jordan Brooks pick. That was the pick I had the biggest concern over as the draft went on. And on day 2, with 2 of their 3 third-round picks, like I said, they tripled down on the wide receiver position, depending on what you think Lynn Bowden is, with Lynn Bowden and Brian Edwards. How do you think Lynn Bowden and Brian Edwards fit into this Raiders offense? And do you think any of them can take that X role opposite Henry Ruggs, who likely play the Z?
You know what? I'm not really sure off the bat. I'll be completely honest with you. I think Edwards is probably the most likely to play that X role, but I thought he was best as a big slot. So, and they already have Nelson Aguilar, who needs to be kind of a vertical slot, probably a similar role to KJ Hamler with the Broncos. Hunter Renfrow is more of that, catch the ball and fall down, tough third down kind of passing weapon. But I think they're actually going to utilize Bowden as more of a running back and a hybrid Wildcat quarterback. I know that, I think it was Bowden who punched the opposing player before the game in the Kentucky Bowl game this past year. So, I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know what sparked that, but I think that's the case. So, I mean, both guys are unique players with the balls in their hand, and opposite of Ruggs, could be a fun combo there. I think that maybe they could have gone a different way, but, they needed firepower. That's another team that really struggled with the weapons. They had Hunter Renfrow, Tyrell Williams, Zay Jones, Marcel Aitman, Nelson Aguilar, Hunter Renfrow. No real difference makers there. So when you have as many picks as the Raiders did in top 100 in a good wide receiver class like this, I don't fault them for taking a more of a shotgun approach.
You can't fault them at all for doing that. And but with this wide receiver class that's coming in next year, it definitely wouldn't be a shock to see them take a wide receiver early next year as well, if they're unhappy with Brian Edwards' development or health, or Lynn Bowden. So the Raiders could have a long-term strategy at wide receiver by getting a couple guys this year and a couple next year. Don't you think that's possible?
Really, it comes down to the quarterback. with the Las Vegas Raiders. How long is Derek Carr going to be there? I believe his contract's pretty easy to get out of. There's been some talk of, yeah, we love him, but then behind the scenes, maybe not as big of a fan of Derek Carr. So maybe, I've been calling my shot. You kind of, you messaged me on Twitter about it, but I think this is a prime spot for Aaron Rodgers next year. I'm calling my shot there. Vegas opening up. I mean, you had this weird season this year, but if you can get Rodgers there and the Raiders, I mean, it just makes too much sense to me. So we'll see. But quarterback right now, it's hard to project wide receiver there for them until they had, what you have in Derek Carr, or they have a quarterback.
Or if they're in position to draft one of the top quarterbacks next year, then that complicates things even more. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the Raiders do. It was a very interesting strategy at wide receiver, as you alluded to, but one that should be commended nonetheless. And their final pick of day 2, Tanner Muse, that was a very, very interesting pick. Like he tested much better than expected for the combine, but word has it then on film that he was hardly athletic at all, and he offered nothing special. Why do you think they went with the Tanner Muse?
Because, like you said, he's a bigger guy. He had some good movement skills. He had some versatility there. He wasn't Isaiah Simmons, but you're taking athletes and prototypes there. I mean, the chance that he can be a really good kind of a Swiss Army knife. Him and Wallace were pretty good for Clemson this past year. Not Isaiah Simmons, but pretty good. So maybe a little bit early, but kind of, you're talking about a late. If he would have gone maybe 10, 20 picks later, that's probably about his range. So I don't mind it at all. In the worst case, he's going to end up a good special teams player with those athletic traits he has.
Yes, and that sounded like a quintessential Mike Mayock pick, dipping into either Clemson or Bama for high character players at that point in the draft. Definitely a Mike Mayock move there. But day 3, I think, is where the Raiders could have get 2 of their biggest contributors from this draft class. John Simpson, the guard from Clemson, and the slot corner from La Tech, Amik Robertson. Which one of those 2 guys do you think is most likely to fulfill their potential?
Well, I really liked Amik Robinson in the draft. I don't think I liked him as much as some of draft Twitter did, but I think he's going to be a really interesting player. And the guy that I really thought he was similar to is actually starting for the Raiders, and LaMarcus Joyner, kind of a nickel safety hybrid, a small guy, but feisty. So I think both these are interesting picks, but I think Robertson, and also because the devaluation of those slot corners, you can get them a little later, they still end up starting. I'll go with Robertson as the guy that I prefer out of those 2.
And last but not least, your initial grade for this Raiders draft class.
I will give them a solid B. I like what they did overall. Downgrade them a little bit with the Damon Arnett pick, but I think a B is a decent grade. I think with 5 top 100 picks, they did pretty well.
Yeah, they did pretty well indeed. And now to your favorite team, the team you cover, and my favorite team, the Denver Broncos. And the Denver Broncos, once again, since John Elway and their personnel and scouting staff apparently had that epiphany after that disastrous 2017 class, at least on paper, they might have hauled in a 3rd very, very solid draft class in a row, starting in the first round, where Jerry Judy from Alabama fell right into their laps at 15 without having to trade up. That was probably the best case scenario the Broncos could have hoped for on night 1. And then they doubled up a wide receiver to help Drew Lock, give him all the chances he needs to succeed with the speedster from Penn State, KJ Hamler. And in round 3, they took Michael Ojemudia, a cornerback from your Iowa Hawkeyes, Lloyd Cushenberry, who was the captain of the LSU offensive line that helped Joe Burrow to that magical season and that national championship, and McTelvin Agim, a late riser from Arkansas. And they had some other interesting picks on day 3. Drew Lock's former teammate, Albert Okwuegbunam from Missouri. That's, I think, how you pronounce it, or we'll just call him Albert O to avoid confusion here. Justin Sternad, a linebacker from Wake Forest, who could have gone higher if not for injury. Natani Muti, who many draft picks loved as a top 50 talent, but he slid all this way due to injuries. Guard from Fresno State, Tyree Cleveland, another speedy wide receiver from Florida, who I saw now at the Senior Bowl, and Derek Tushka, an edge rusher from North Dakota State University. And let's go to the top of this Broncos draft class with Jerry Judy. I remember listening to you and the guys on the pre-draft podcasts, and you mentioned that that you preferred CeeDee Lamb and Henry Ruggs over Jerry Judy for the Broncos. And I probably misinterpreted, but I was like listing them by saying, oh my God, if one of these players are on the board along with Judy, I might be disappointed. But when the Judy pick did come in, I actually was not disappointed. And I immediately thought to myself on the air, Jerry Judy has more of a complementary skill set to Cortland Sutton than CeeDee Lamb does. Not say CeeDee Lamb has some different traits to Cortland Sutton, which he does, but Judy is kind of more of that opposite play style that you need when assembling a wide receiver core. Like Cortland Sutton does some of those things CeeDee Lamb does very well, and you needed a guy who complemented him even more in Jerry Judy. So 2 weeks later, how do you feel about them going Jerry Judy over CeeDee Lamb? And what do you say to Broncos fans still disappointed that they did not choose CeeDee Lamb over Jerry Judy?
I don't think disappointed can be the right word. If you're disappointed going Jerry Judy over CeeDee Lamb, you probably had some bias coming into it. Like I said, it was kind of that starter Pokemon debate, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, Charmander. Who you want to go with is more of a style preference than anything else. I think that CeeDee Lamb has the better potential to be a dominating number one because of the physicality of his game. But I mean, you already have Cortland Sutton here. Who can be that physical presence. Jerry Judy's that technical route runner that can play slot, play the Z. So it makes a lot of sense, especially with the Patrick Shermer offense, where that route running is super important to uncover. I mean, he doesn't scheme guys open as much as he depends on them to get open with their route running and uncovering ability. So Jerry Judy, I think it's a good pick, obviously, and should be. I think he becomes the Broncos' primary go-to guy in the pass game. He's not going to probably create as many explosive pass plays as Cortland Sutton, just because of Sutton's play style, how I imagine they'll all fit together. But you mean last year we saw towards the end of the season, Deshawn Hamilton starting to get a lot of targets, but Deshawn Hamilton, much like KJ Hill, gets the ball, kind of falls down, not much of a threat down the field or after the catch. Now you have a guy who can do a little bit of everything, good speed, underrated speed, and also, everybody knows the highlights with him after the catch where he's making guys look silly. So it's a good pick. It helps the Broncos offense a lot. And Judy can make plays, big plays, but he can also uncover quickly and help Drew Lock, if he does feel pressure bearing down on him.
Yes, and you mentioned those yard after catch plays for Judy. While CeeDee Lamb might have the bitter potential because of his athleticism, Jerry Judy's yard after catch ability is nothing to sneeze at either.
Yeah, it's just a different style. I mean, Judy's more of the, you can't touch me, where CeeDee Lamb is more of the guys are hula hooping off of him because he's so strong at the point of contact. So, I mean, he's just making weak arm tackles. They're nothing, but Judy makes guys miss. So, little different style. It's the ice cream debate, different Pokemon. They're both great in different ways. And Henry Ruggs will just run right past you. So, I'd have been happy with any of them. I am happy with any of them. Jerry Judy, though, he's a Bronco now. Fits great with Cortland Sutton and should make Drew Lock and Patrick Shermer quite happy.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact they didn't have to trade up for him was an even bigger bonus, and it made it worth it in the end. And in round two, I was initially shocked at the KJ Hamler pick, but talking with my guys during the live stream after the pick came in, I kind of realized it made more sense than I initially thought, because keep in mind, Pat Shermer likes to run those 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets more than 2/3 of the time. And you had Sutton and Judy, but you were still missing that lid lifter with that speed that could help dictate coverages the same way a Henry Ruggs would help you dictate coverages. Not saying KJ Hamler is Henry Ruggs. Ruggs has a much more well-rounded game at the moment, but it did make a lot more sense. Nonetheless, I still think there might have been a couple better options on the board, like a Josh Jones or a Christian Fulton or a Trayvon Diggs or a Jalen Johnson at tackle and quarter, respectively. But why do you think taking Hamler over all those guys made sense?
I think that a Vic Fangio wanted Hamler because what Hamler can do to opposing defenses. I mean, he's seen it, how hard it is to run his match cover defense when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill on the other side, because that speed means you got to go man. And when you go man, your odds, you can isolate some guys a little bit better and create some big plays. So Hamler is a guy, because of his speed, especially from the slot, you can do a lot of things with him, and he can help dictate coverages. I do worry about the hands. I mean, the size is a concern. He's got to be freaking fast, and he is really fast, but he's got to be really fast at that size with those hand concerns. Obviously, it can improve the hands as well, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and you really go from a position of weakness to a position of strength and surround Lock with guys that are all completely different from Fant, Sutton, Judy, and Hamler. So you're just strengthening his strength, taking advantage of a good class and getting guys that are all different and can fill different roles and win in different ways. And, the offensive tackle, Josh Jones was there, Ezra Cleveland was there, but, if Munchak didn't sign off on that, or the fact that Vic Fangio might outrank him and wanted KJ Hamler, you're going to have to go with the old coach on that one.
Oh, yes. I was also kind of thinking the Broncos probably thought that they didn't think Josh Jones or Ezra Cleveland would represent that much of a dramatic improvement over their current tackle situation anyways.
That's possible. And also, I mean, both those guys were sub 34-inch arms, I believe.
Yeah.
Both of them probably, neither of them that good at down blocking, power blocking. Ezra Cleveland's more of an occupier, wide zone, ends up going to Gary Kubiak Vikings. So that makes a lot of sense. And Josh Jones, a lot of different schemes. I think he needs some time. He's a little bit older than these other tackles as well. And the guy that probably, there seems to be a tackle every year in this regard, but the guy that the media was off of in regards to whether the NFL valued him. So after the Senior Bowl, whatnot, media shot him up to the 5th tackle. A lot of people really liked him, but the NFL didn't like him as much. So we'll see how that comes to play out over time. I mean, I remember Eric Fisher was a guy that a lot of people thought was a late first rounder, ended up going mid-second and hardly ever saw the field. So we'll see.
We shall see, indeed. And another thing about Hamler that's interesting is that thread. You tweeted out a thread a couple days ago, and watching the film, I kind of get the points. Some people say that he might end up being more of a gadget player because he has underrated route running abilities at the moment. Do you share that view?
I mean, I don't know about underrated. He can uncover. It's not like Jerry Judy, but the athleticism and everything he has, you can have special packages for him early on. And he's a guy that you probably do need to scheme, open some touches more early in his career, maybe some gadgety stuff as well. But I mean, he does have the ability to uncover quickly. He's not just an explosive guy straight. He's also very agile. So a lot of potential there. I think that is an area he does need to improve upon, though, entering the league.
Yes, but him being in a wide receiver core with Jerry Judy, Cortland Sutton, on him having to face arguably a team's worst cornerback on any given play is a good way to start his NFL career and hopefully get the most out of his potential. And in the 3rd round, I kind of thought that the Broncos reverted to their old drafting habits by drafting Michael Ojemudia at 77, who many people on draft Twitter had him pegged in like a round or 2 later, but some people really liked him. Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports was a big fan of Michael Ojemudia. For one, do you think the Broncos, do you think that was too much of a reach there, or do you think it was reasonable, and what do you think he brings to the Broncos overall?
Well, I think this is a guy who maybe not every single scheme will value him, but it does sound like in this match quarter scheme, that Vic Fangio would like him a little bit more. I think he's one of the guys rare this far down that has boundary ability. He ran pretty well at the combine. He's long. He does not get beat deep ever. Sometimes that means he's not breaking on plays and making plays down the field and making plays on the ball, but I think there is some potential there. Iowa just ran a really simple defensive scheme. They don't ask you to do too much. Just don't get beat deep. Keep it in front of you. Overall, in effect, it's kind of what you see with the Vic Fangio defense, where they really emphasize not giving up the big play, but to the nth degree, keep it simple, stupid. Let guys go out there and do their job. So Ojemudia will need to show to be more valuable. But in this scheme, I think he's going to be given a chance to start in nickel sub packages as that boundary corner opposite Boye with Callahan in slot. So we'll see. Maybe a little bit of a reach, but Donatell and Fangio are 2 of the better guys as far as maximizing their cornerback talent, especially it's in the secondary back 7. And if Ojemudia is a guy that they liked, then they must see something that a lot of draft Twitter doesn't. And again, a lot of these guys, especially the Fangio defense, not every single player is going to fit every single scheme, and Ojemudia fits this defense. So I think it makes good sense.
Yes, and I believe one of the many reasons why those universal draft boards had him rated where they did at that round 4 to 5 range is because they didn't view him as a fit for every scheme, but more those zone-heavy schemes like the Broncos probably had a higher premium on him. And I also heard a rumor that he would have been gone by pick 83 anyway, so he was much more valued highly within the league than on a lot of draft Twitter.
Again, it's a cornerback position, and not only is he a cornerback, but he's a boundary corner. He has a chance to be a boundary corner, maybe some nickel and safety ability as well, as Vic Fangio has hinted at. Didn't see that so much at Iowa, but I think he did come to Iowa as a linebacker / safety, so definitely a bigger body, some length there as well. So we'll see, but I think he's definitely got a chance to be a good one here, and hopefully can help the Broncos break their 3rd-round cornerback trend of late.
Let's hope so, indeed. And their next pick, Lloyd Cushenberry, easily the best value pick of day two, if not the Broncos' entire draft. Lloyd Cushenberry, I interviewed him at the Senior Bowl. He's a very nice guy, also very smart. He did a very good job in one-on-one drills against Javon Kinlaw, who went 14th to the 49ers at the Senior Bowl. But interestingly, the Broncos explored a trade up to 79 overall to take Temple's Matt Hennessy, who you personally like better, but that quickly went recycled when the Falcons decided to tab him at 78 as the long-term heir to Alex Mack. But nonetheless, they stayed put at A3 and were still able to get Lloyd Cushenberry, who many people liked better than Matt Hennessy. Do you think Lloyd Cushenberry is that much of a downgrade from Matt Hennessy in terms as far as the Broncos are concerned?
I don't think so. I just think that Hennessy played with a little bit more control and had a little bit more movement skills in the run blocking game. But Cushenberry, good player. I mean, smart player as well. That Derek Brown game did give me a little bit of pause, but Derek Brown did that to a few guys this year. Cushenberry, he's long, and I do like that about cornerback, and I do think he can anchor. I wish he was a little bit better with his hands, but I mean, obviously, I hate to keep using the appeal to authority bias here or whatever you want to call that, but Mike Munchak is here. If anybody's going to get one of these guys right, it's Mike Munchak. So I feel pretty good about Cushenberry also getting to go play between Reisner and Glasgow. Helps him a lot as well. The steal of the draft, I feel like Cushenberry might have been a little bit overvalued.
I said the steal of the Broncos draft.
Yeah. I think in general, some people, like a lot of people, would have been happy if the Broncos took Cushenberry at 46 and Hamler at 83. And I don't think the league valued those. Obviously, the league didn't value those guys as much, but I didn't either. I thought Cushenberry, probably I would have around 77. That area would have been fine with it, but cornerback more value. But it's a pretty good pick. And I don't think he is as guaranteed of a day one starter because Patrick Morris is being there obviously with everything going on in the world right now. But Cushenberry is a really good pick here. Versatility, length, solid blocker, and above all else, intelligent. I mean, I think that intelligence and the leadership that he displays, that's something you can pair with Drew Lock, and you might have that as a center quarterback combo for the next decade if everything goes well. So I think it's a good pick here. Maybe a little bit. I don't want to temper expectations too much, but I think we need to temper expectations a little bit. But good pick there, especially at 83.
Yes, especially given COVID-19 and what kind of a season will we have this year. Expectations have to be lowered for almost every rookie this year.
I mean, it's such an unknown. It's hard to say, but I just think we need to have perspective and have some patience. And if a guy is a little bit slow out of the gate, just take a deep breath and be like, okay, well, give him some time. Give him some time to breathe. Oh,
absolutely. And that applies to not just the Broncos. That applies to every single team and every single fan base. And the Broncos' final pick on day two, McTelvin Agim, a defensive tackle from Arkansas. He was a big fan of a lot of people on draft Twitter, and his stock was rising in the final month leading up to the draft. What did you think of that pick?
I think I love going cornerback and defensive line every single year. And if you can help it, if you have the excess pick like the Broncos had, just keep feeding that fire. If the issue with cornerback and defensive line is that it takes a couple of years to develop these guys. And if you don't continually invest in them, once you get thin at cornerback, defensive line, offensive line, you're going to be in trouble. So getting a guy like McTelvin Agim, he's much more of a 2021 and beyond probably investment. He'll get some rotational stuff this year, but yeah, solid pick here at the end. I think he has a lot of versatility on the defensive line. He primarily played in the B gap, but I do think there is some 0-1 technique potential, especially in sub packages as well. So we'll see where he goes. We'll see where that body type is. I know that he played a lot of more of a defensive end position, a little bit of more of a multiple defensive end with Arkansas, but he added weight. And a lot of people said with that added weight, especially in the lower half, he didn't lose any explosiveness. So I'm curious to see what they do with that frame. He's a bigger guy than I thought. And, we'll see where it goes. I do think that he hasn't really been able to string moves together yet. That's kind of that next thing with him as far as pass rushing goes, but he does have some good moves in there. I mean, when you see him, a 310-pound guy out there doing a spin move, maybe uses it a little bit too much, but he's pretty good, pretty nimble for a big guy. So I'm very interested to see how he goes.
Yes. Why do you think it was a mistake to take him over guys like James Lynch here, or do you think he made sense here?
I think he made sense. I think James Lynch, I did like what he brought, but I just wish he was bigger, wish he was stronger. Maybe kind of has some DeMarcus Walker vibes where it's like the athleticism, you wish he was either more athletic or bigger, where Agim has a little bit more of the frame to add more weight and still has pretty good get off. So I think Ajim is a good pick here. He's a guy that I liked a lot.
All right, and concluding with the Broncos' Day 3 selections, we talked about Netani Moody being a potential top 50 talent, if not for injuries. But let's keep him out of this debate, assuming his injuries stay the course, which hopefully they don't. But his history tells us that most of these guys who were chronically injured in college will continue to get injured in the NFL. So out of these following picks, Alfred Okwuegbunam, Justin Sternad, Tyreek Cleveland, or Derek Tushka, which one of those 4 guys do you think has is most likely to make a long-term impact for the Broncos?
Oh man, most likely to make a long-term impact. That's a good question. I mean, all these guys, they're different levels of boom or bust, or high floor. I think most likely to make a long-term impact, I'm going to go with the guy with the highest floor would be Justin Sternad. Just because the Broncos need a coverage guy. They're obviously at the linebacker position. In a worst case, he can provide some special teams ability, but Okwuegbunam and Moody provide much bigger, a much higher ceiling. So if those guys hit, then you're talking about a starter. I mean, a starter getting day 3, that's great value. But as far as most likely, playing the odds here, I think Sternad's the guy.
Yeah, and speaking of Okwuegbunam, it's kind of interesting because in more retrospect, I do understand it more because the Broncos, their tight end depth long term headed into the draft was an unknown after Noah Fant, their first round pick in 2019, who you obviously know about, another fellow Iowa Hawkeye. But they needed that backup who had more of a skill set that was like Fant, and that is why I think the Okwuegbunam pick makes more sense in hindsight.
Yeah, Okwuegbunam, he'll come in. I know that some of the draft Twitter hated the move. I know some of them liked the move. Big guy. He can come in and run seam routes right away. I didn't think that the tape matched the athleticism they had at the combine, but when you're talking a guy who's 6'6", 260 and runs a sub 4.5 40, even if you just have a few routes in there because he's spelling Noah Fant and can take off the seam and bust between 2 safeties, that brings some value. So, I mean, you're taking a chance on a tools guy there, and that's what day 3 is about.
You said it. And what is your initial grade for this Broncos class?
Oh, gosh, I've been going back and forth between a B+ and an A-. They didn't get offensive tackle. That's obviously a big concern. Cornerback is still a concern as well. But I think all in all, maybe I'm biased, but typically I'm a hard grader. I'm going to give them an A-. I think this is a pretty good class, top to bottom. I thought they did a good job adding upside, some boom or bust guys day 3, a lot of captains, and a class that, obviously not all these guys are going to hit, but I think you could probably get 4 or 5 starters out of it, and that would be phenomenal.
It most certainly will. And last but not least, we bring you the draft class of the Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're likely to be kings of the AFC West for quite a while going forward. And here are the Chiefs draft class. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was their first round pick, that running back from LSU. Willie Gay Jr., who stock started to take off at the combine. Linebacker from Mississippi State was their round 2 pick. Lucas Niang, an offensive lineman from Texas Christian, who fell this far due to injury concerns as their 3rd round pick. L'Jarius Sneed, a safety from La Tech. Michael Dana, an edge from Michigan, and Bo Pete Keys, a defensive back from Tulane. Given the fact that the Chiefs are Super Bowl champions, they had more freedom and more leeway to do what they wanted with this class. And it started in round 1 by taking more of a bell cow running back in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was even though I'm no scout, he was my personal favorite running back in this class. His balance is unreal. His abilities in the run and pass game are exceptional. He is just a monster. He is so goddamn hard to tackle. And based on what the Chargers and the Broncos and the Raiders did in the draft to try to load up on offense to try to catch the Chiefs said, bring it on. We're doubling down. And they take a guy that could potentially make their offense even more dangerous. How does Clyde Edwards-Helaire make the Chiefs offense more dangerous?
Well, he gives another guy that Patrick Mahomes can get the ball to after he pulls some Houdini BS and escape the pass rush. Hyde Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a guy that Andy Reid has compared to Brian Westbrook. It makes sense. He's not the most explosive guy as far as the long speed, but he can get up and go in pretty quickly. Runs like a fire hydrant out there. and a solid pass protector as well, which is important for the running back position. Pretty underrated aspect of playing the running back, especially with offensive lines today, and a solid receiver. So I don't love the value of taking a running back in the first round, even though it is pick 32, especially when you got Damian Williams came in and played pretty well last year, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as far as the 2020 Chiefs, makes them a heck of a lot better. And, that's pretty much the best I can say about it. I mean, running back, we can have a whole debate about that, but the fact that they can have another weapon there out of the backfield that Patrick Mahomes can lean on and makes them that much better and tougher to defend this upcoming season.
Yes, and about their second round pick, Willie Gay Jr., his testing helped him a lot at the combine, and I believe he interviewed well and addressed some characteristics he had in the past, and Andy Reid apparently thought those characteristics were behind him. But how does Willie Gay upgrade that linebacking core?
Well, he adds athleticism. It's a core that they have some athletic guys, but they're too small, not really good against the run. They have some guys that are against the run, but they really struggle in pass coverage. I mean, down the Super Bowl stretch last year, they essentially went to those safety linebackers, and they improved because the Chiefs' offense was so good and they could get ahead. And, if they're run against us, I dare you kind of thing, because the Chiefs were already getting up ahead in that case. But I think that Gay's kind of the best of both worlds. He's massive upside, good frame, punched his own quarterback this past year. And I think that's a theme in the AFC West, players punching each other. But, good athletic player, makes a lot of sense, adds some much-needed athleticism to that second level of the defense. So wouldn't surprise me at all if he busted, but there's pretty good upside with the pick.
Yeah, and Lucas Niang, he was a guy who you were pretty high on, judging from your comments on our offensive line preview show for the draft. He was the Chiefs' third-round pick, and it personally wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being the best pick out of this class, because keep in mind, I believe after the 2020 season, Mitchell Schwartz, the best right tackle in football, his contract expired, and he's getting a little long in the tooth. So Lucas Niang, do you think he could be the Chiefs' starting right tackle in as early as 2021?
I mean, it's possible, but gosh, the Chiefs moving on from one of the best right tackles in football. I know they got to pay Mahomes. Who knows what the cap is going to be due to everything going on in the world, but that seems maybe a little bit short-sighted. But, I mean, it's just a contingency plan. Niang's got some big upside, but he probably needs a year to get healthy, work on that technique again, because his tape in 2018 was much better than 2019. So there's some injury concerns there, but there's massive upside as well. So, I mean, if you have the luxury the Chiefs have right now and you can get a potential starting tackle at the end of the first round, and even if he doesn't play for 1 or 2 years, I mean, that can bring you some value. So I don't hate the pick at all. The injuries are a concern. Maybe a guy, I think I read that he is a guy that fell and was hurt a lot because there was no combine medical rechecks, which typically happen. Obviously you don't have the fanfare of the regular combine, but those occur, and those did not happen this year. So Niang slipped, has some injury concerns, but starting upside at tackle, especially right tackle. So Mitchell Schwartz, good tackle for a long time, but you make a good point. Guys get older, they move on. If you can get somebody cheaper and has a better, at least projected long-term career, then that might be the direction they go.
It might. And out of their day 3 picks, L'Jarius Sneed, the Louisiana Tech safety, Michael Dana, the edge from Michigan, and Bo-Pete Keys, the corner from Tulane, which one of those 3 are you the highest on?
I really like L'Jarius Sneed. I watching Louisiana Tech this past year. Sneed actually was the safety and Robertson was the cornerback, but I thought Sneed, I went back and watched in 2018, and I thought he was better at cornerback than safety. Just didn't work the best as that single high safety. So Sneed's a guy that I liked a lot. I'll be honest with you, I did not watch much or zero in on hardly any of Michael Dana or Bo-Pete Keys. So I won't speak from ignorance, or I pretend that I did, but I did watch Sneed. And I thought he was an interesting player. And I think that, did Sneed and Robertson go back to back? Did they go really close together?
Sneed went 138, and just checking the Raiders here, Robertson went
139.
139. Yep, they went back to back. Good memory.
I thought that. Both Louisiana Tech guys, both guys I like back to back to division rivals. I remember that one.
And hopefully La Tech gets another NFL player to add to their legacy other than Terry Bradshaw. But two of the best athletes of all time, and Terry Bradshaw and Karl Malone, went to La Tech, and hopefully they'll have another person to brag about sooner rather than later. And he is Nick Kendell, ladies and gentlemen, of MileHighHuddle.com. Follow him on Twitter at Nick Kendell, MHH. And Nick, before we do our final overall recap of all these draft classes, what is your initial grade for these Super Bowl champs in their 2020 draft class?
I'll give them a B-. I didn't like it as much as the Raiders. Obviously, they had less picks. Go ahead running back in the first round. A guy that's more of a project at linebacker in the second round. I don't think it's the best use of value, but overall it makes sense. They're going for it now. Andy Reid, I mean, how much longer does he have? That's a real question. This is a team that made draft picks that should help this 2020 team. Don't know about the long-term value, but I don't fault them. I mean, they got the best quarterback in football on a rookie deal. Go win another Super Bowl trophy if you can get it.
Indeed. And before we conclude our program, let's play a little game of superlatives here. What do you think was the best overall pick out of all these four draft classes if you had to make a choice?
The best overall pick?
Yes.
I'm going to go Jerry Judy. I mean, a lot of people thought that he was a guy that was going to go pretty early. I didn't have the number one trade. It's not really like a Julio Jones or anything, but I think with the fit in the defense, the fact that he can be paired with a guy not only Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant, but I mean KJ Hamler as well. I think that it's just all of that stuff coming together. It's too beautiful. So I'm going to go Judy. The fact that he fell there, the Broncos took him. The Alabama streak is broken for Elway. I think it's a great pick.
Yes, and plus, neither Judy Lamb nor Ruggs were viewed by the NFL apparently as a Julio or Megatron type prospect. So all three of those guys had holes that you could nitpick at. So that makes so that's another reason why nobody should still be angry that the Broncos went Judy over Lamb or vice versa. And what do you think was the biggest head scratcher out of all these draft classes?
I think that Dana pick caught me off guard. I know that he was like a transfer from Central Michigan. Don't hold me to that. I did not watch much of him, but I think Bradley and I was still on the board. I don't know. I didn't like that pick as much. Other than that, then obviously the Damon Arnett one. But I used a first round pick, the easy out for Jerry Judy. So I'll go round 3-1 and be a little bit more interesting with that. The next question.
Yes. Well, let's take Michael Dana out of it. What do you think was the biggest head scratcher days 1 and 2?
Oh, probably Arnett. I mean, I understand that Mayock wanted to take guys from a blue chip program. He had round 1 tape this past year. I'll stand by that. It was pretty good, or at least top 40 tape, but there was enough differentiators, or not differentiators, but enough things there where I kind of picked at him and he fell down the board a little bit. Older guy, didn't test the best, character concerns. It's all enough to make me not love the pick in the top 20.
And what do you think was the biggest steal personally?
The biggest steal? Ooh, I'm going to go with Lucas Niang. I think if you can get a starting caliber tackle there at the very bottom of the third round, that's a heck of a pick. And Niang, because they have Schwartz there, there's not going to be a rush to get him in there. He can work on some of the techniques, some of the lunging that he has, but the size, the movement skills, if he can get to 2018 form and improve upon that, he has a chance to be a pretty good starting tackle in this league. So I'll go with Niang.
Nick Kendell, thank you so much for joining us once again. And that's it for tonight here on Sports Crush. But we'll be back very, very soon as we continue our division by division draft recap of this 2020 NFL draft. But for now, be sure you stay home, stay safe, stay healthy, and wash those hands and stay positive, people. That's all we could ask for at this time. But for Nick Kendell, I am David Cromwell saying so long and keep at it, folks. We got this.